I'll never forget that day. My daughter stood radiant in her wedding gown, the hall filled with music, laughter, and guests dressed in their finest clothes. I should have been the proudest father in the world, but instead I stood there frozen, my heart crushed, my dignity ripped apart, because at the very moment I thought my daughter's new life was beginning. Her husband, my own son-in-law, turned to his boss, pointed at me, and said with a mocking laugh, "That's my father-in-law, an unemployed loser. He has nothing. But don't worry, I'll take good care of his daughter." The hall erupted in chuckles from a few tables. Others gasped, some lowered their eyes in pity, and a wave of shame hit me like a storm. My hands trembled. My chest tightened. I couldn't breathe, but what they didn't know, what he didn't know, was that my silence wasn't weakness. It was the calm before the storm. And minutes later, the truth would begin to unravel, a truth so powerful that it would destroy the very arrogance he had built his life upon. My name is Richard Hawley. I'm 58 years old. A simple man, or at least that's what most people think. A widower. A father who poured every ounce of love and sacrifice into raising his only daughter, Lily. After her mother passed away, I never remarried. Lily was my world, my pride, my reason for waking up each morning. Every coin I earned, every drop of sweat I shed, every tear I held back, it was all for her. I worked in silence, lived modestly, and never boasted about my life. People saw me as quiet, reserved, maybe even poor. But I never cared what the world thought of me. My only concern was that my daughter never lacked love, education, or opportunity. And that's why what happened at her wedding broke me in ways I can't fully describe. Before I take you deeper into my story and reveal how a single insult at a wedding turned into the biggest mistake of my son-in-law's life, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happens next. Raising Lily wasn't easy. After her mother died, I was left with nothing but hospital bills, an old car, and a small rented house. But I promised myself, she will never feel the emptiness I feel. She will grow up loved, cared for, and given every chance to succeed. I worked multiple jobs, day shift at a factory, night shift as a security guard. On weekends, I fixed people's cars for extra cash. My hands became calloused, my back bent with exhaustion. But when I saw Lily smile, it all felt worth it. She was bright, top of her class, loved by teachers. I never missed a single parent-teacher meeting, even if it meant walking there after a 14-hour shift. She wanted to be a teacher, to give back to children like her. I told her I'd support her no matter what. As the years passed, we grew even closer. She became not just my daughter, but my confidant, my best friend. We'd spend evenings eating simple meals together, laughing at silly TV shows, talking about her dreams. When she first told me about Ryan, the man who would later become my son-in-law, her eyes sparkled in a way I hadn't seen before. "Dad," she said, "he's charming, successful, and he says he wants to take care of me." I wanted to be happy for her. I really did. But something about Ryan didn't sit right with me from the beginning. His smile was a little too polished. His words felt rehearsed. He was the kind of man who entered a room and made sure everyone noticed, but Lily loved him. And as a father, what could I do? My role was to support her, even if it meant biting my tongue about my doubts. The engagement was extravagant. Ryan insisted on it. He wanted big halls, expensive decorations, luxury cars. I told him I couldn't afford much, but he waved his hand dismissively. "Don't worry, Richard. I've got it covered. Just bring yourself." The words stung a little, but I convinced myself to ignore them. Maybe he was just being generous. Maybe I was reading too much into it. But the truth was, Ryan had already judged me. In his eyes, I wasn't worthy of respect because I didn't flaunt money or status. And on the wedding day, he made sure the whole world saw me the way he saw me. As nothing. The hall was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, tables draped in white silk, music echoing from a live band. Guests arrived in suits and gowns, the kind of people who lived in a different world from mine. I wore my best suit. It wasn't new. It wasn't designer. But it was clean, pressed, and carried with it the memories of my wife's funeral, Lily's graduation, and every important day in our lives. As I stood there watching my daughter walk down the aisle, tears welled in my eyes. She looked like an angel, radiant and pure. For a moment, I forgot my worries. For a moment, I felt nothing but pride. But that moment shattered quickly. During the reception, Ryan guided his boss, a tall man with a stern face, toward me. I smiled politely, ready to shake his hand. But Ryan's words sliced through me like a knife. "This is my father-in-law," he said, chuckling. "An unemployed loser. He doesn't have much, but hey, every family needs someone like him, right?" The boss forced a smile, clearly uncomfortable. Some guests laughed nervously. Others avoided my eyes. My face burned. My hands clenched into fists at my side. I wanted to shout, to tell them who I really was, what I had endured, what I had achieved silently behind the curtain. But I didn't. Not yet, because I knew something Ryan didn't. And soon, his arrogance would crumble in front of everyone. The laughter still echoes in my ears. Even now, when I close my eyes, I can see their faces, some mocking, some sympathetic, some trying to hide their discomfort. But all of them heard it. All of them heard my son-in-law call me a loser on my daughter's wedding day. The words hung in the air like poison. I wanted to disappear. I stood there, frozen, forcing a smile so my daughter wouldn't notice my pain. But inside, something shattered. A few guests chuckled openly. I saw one of Ryan's groomsmen whisper to another, their shoulders shaking with suppressed laughter. Two women at the next table glanced at me with pity, then quickly looked away as if my very presence embarrassed them. And Ryan's boss, the man he was so desperate to impress, shifted uncomfortably. He forced a laugh, but it was awkward, strained. His eyes flicked to me, and for a brief second, I saw a flicker of something, maybe shame, maybe judgment, before he turned back to Ryan. Ryan, of course, didn't notice. He was too busy basking in the attention, too busy flaunting his own arrogance. He clapped his boss on the shoulder. "Don't worry about Lily, sir. She be well taken care of. I'm the one bringing wealth into this marriage. Her father?" He smirked, waving dismissively at me. "Well, he did what he could. But let's just say, I'll make sure Lily never lives the way he does." More laughter. Louder this time. I felt my throat tighten. My hands trembled as I clutched my glass of water, the condensation dripping onto my suit. My heart pounded in my chest, every beat a reminder of my humiliation. How could he? How could he stand there, on the most important day of my daughter's life, and tear me down in front of everyone? Didn't he know what I had sacrificed? Did he know the nights I went to bed hungry so Lily could eat? Did he know the hours I worked until my body gave out just so she could have an education? I gave her my life. Every breath, every coin, every ounce of strength. And now, here I stood, not as a proud father, but as the punchline to his cruel joke. Tears burned at the corners of my eyes, but I forced them back. No, not here. Not now. I wouldn't let them see me break. I glanced at my daughter. She hadn't heard. She was across the hall, laughing with her bridesmaids, radiant in her white gown. For a brief moment, I was grateful. Grateful that she didn't hear her husband mock me like that. grateful that she still looked at him with love in her eyes. But a shadow crept into my heart. If this is how he treats me now, on our very first day as family, what will he do to her when no one is watching? I remembered little moments, things I had brushed aside for Lily's happiness. Like the time Ryan visited our home and sneered at the old furniture. Antique, huh? He laughed. Or just second-hand? Or the time Lily showed me the expensive ring he bought her, and I overheard him mutter, "She better be worth the investment." I told myself I was overthinking, that love makes people say stupid things, that I shouldn't meddle in my daughter's choices. But standing there, humiliated in front of hundreds, I realized these weren't harmless jokes. This was who he truly was. Arrogant, selfish, cruel. I excused myself. My legs carried me to a quiet corner of the hall, near the exit where no one noticed me. I leaned against the wall, my chest heaving, my eyes fixed on the ground. I felt small, invisible, like the worthless man Ryan had called me. For the first time in years, I doubted myself. Maybe I really was nothing. Maybe all my sacrifices meant nothing. Maybe the world saw me the way Ryan did, as a man who had nothing to offer, nothing to show. But then, a memory flashed. Lily at 7 years old, sitting at the kitchen table with a book in her hand. "Daddy," she said, her little voice determined, "I'm going to make you proud one day." And I smiled at her then, ruffling her hair. "You already have, sweetheart, just by being you." That memory pierced through my despair like sunlight through a storm. No, I wasn't worthless. I had given her everything I had. And even if Ryan couldn't see it, even if the guests couldn't see it, I knew my worth, and one day soon. So would they. As I returned to my seat, I heard whispers. "Poor man," one woman murmured. "Imagine being insulted like that on your own daughter's wedding day." Another man shook his head. "Shameful. The son-in-law should have shown more respect, but others weren't so kind." Well, what did he expect? A younger man scoffed. "Look at him. Old suit, no presents, no money. He looks like a nobody." Ryan's just telling the truth. The words stabbed deeper than any knife. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to remain composed. But inside, something was changing. Enough humiliation, enough silence. I had lived quietly for years, keeping my head down, hiding the truth about who I really was. But maybe that was my mistake. Maybe I had let people believe I was less than I truly am. And Ryan. Ryan had made the mistake of turning my humility into his weapon. He thought I was powerless. He thought he could step on me, use me as a stepping stone to his own glory. But he had no idea who he was dealing with. No idea what I was capable of. Straightened my back, lifted my chin, and looked across the hall at my daughter's husband, my new son in law. And for the first time that night, I didn't feel shame. I felt fire, the fire of a man who has been pushed too far. They laughed at me tonight. They pitied me. They mocked me. But they won't laugh for long, because soon, very soon, they will learn the truth. And when they do, Ryan's world will come crashing down in ways he never imagined. That night, after the wedding ended, I walked home alone. The lights of the banquet hall faded behind me, but Ryan's words still echoed in my mind. Poor, worthless. Each word was a dagger. The streets were quiet, but inside me, a storm was raging. I reached my small home, the same home where I had raised Lily with nothing but love and sacrifice. I sat at the edge of my bed, staring into the darkness. For hours, I replayed the humiliation over and over. His laugh, the crowd smirks, the whispers. And then I stopped, because in that silence, something inside me snapped. Why should I hide anymore? Why should I let people think I am a man with nothing, when the truth is far from it. For years, I lived humbly. I wore old clothes. I drove an old car. I lived in a modest home. Not because I was poor, but because I valued simplicity. Because I wanted Lily to grow up grounded, not spoiled. Ryan looked at me and saw a beggar. What he failed to see was the empire I built with my own two hands, the investments, the properties, the silent partnerships, the wealth I quietly secured so my daughter's future would always be safe. I was not poor. I was not worthless. I was a man who chose to be underestimated. But Ryan's cruelty had awoken something in me. And now, it was time to show him who I really was. The next day, I sat at my desk, pulling out old documents. Bank records, property deeds, business contracts with powerful names signed at the bottom. Each paper was a reminder of the empire Ryan had mocked without knowing. And slowly, a plan began to form. I wouldn't confront him with anger. I wouldn't scream or shout or demand an apology. I would let him bury himself with his own arrogance. And then, when the moment was right, I would pull the ground out from beneath his feet. Just days into their marriage, Lily called me. Her voice trembled. "Dad, Ryan's been acting strange." "What do you mean, sweetheart?" I asked, my heart sinking. He talks about money all the time. About investments. About how much everything costs. He even said I should convince you to give us your house, because you don't need it anymore. My blood ran cold. So that was it. Ryan hadn't married Lily out of love. He had married her for greed. But Lily was still blind. She thought he was just stressed. She didn't see the monster behind his smile. I clenched my fists. I wouldn't let her suffer. Not for long. One evening, I invited Ryan over. I sat across from him at my modest dinner table, offering him tea. "So, Ryan," I said calmly, "what are your plans for the future? How will you take care of my daughter?" He smirked, leaning back in his chair. "Don't worry about that, old man. I've got it all figured out. Lily's going to live like a queen. As long as you cooperate." I raised an eyebrow. "Cooperate?" He leaned forward, his tone dripping with arrogance. "Let's not play games. You may not have much, but whatever scraps you do have, pass them down. To us. To me. Think of it as securing Lily's happiness. Scraps. That's what he called everything I owned." I sipped my tea slowly, hiding my anger. "And if I refuse?" Ryan chuckled darkly. "Then Lily suffers. And trust me, you don't want that on your conscience." That was it. The final straw. Not only had he insulted me, now he dared to threaten me through my own daughter. I watched him leave that night, his expensive shoes clicking arrogantly against the floor, and I made a silent vow Ryan would regret ever underestimating me. And soon, the world would see the real man he mocked. They thought I was powerless. They thought I was poor. They thought I was a man who could be trampled and forgotten. But what they didn't know was that the storm was already coming, and Ryan would be the first to be destroyed by it. When I first started pulling the papers together, it felt strange, almost like dusting off an old life I had never wanted to boast about. Bank ledgers with small, steady deposits. Deeds with my name tucked between lines of clauses. Contracts with signatures I barely remembered signing years ago. Quiet investments. Silent partnerships. Nothing flashy. Nothing to parade. And everything to protect my daughter's future. I spread the files across the kitchen table one evening, the lamp casting a tired pool of light over each page. It was there, in the hush of my little home, that I finally allowed myself to remember the plan I had made years ago, while Lily was still a child and the world felt fragile. I had worked hard not to show off, not because I had nothing, but because I wanted Lily to grow up with roots, not with wings made of gold. I wanted her to value people, not things. That night, I let every memory come back, the thrift, the sacrifices, and the private, stubborn pride that had made me anonymous. Maybe I had been too humble. Perhaps I had let the world assume I was less than I was. But humility had been my choice, not my destiny. I opened a ledger I hadn't looked at in years. There, in faded ink, were the beginnings of what later grew into a small portfolio. A warehouse bought when a struggling friend needed a partner. A small rental house purchased after a bargain sale. A share in a family business that paid quiet dividends. Over decades, those modest decisions had grown, compounded, multiplied. I had always been careful, a quiet shareholder, a silent guarantor. I never needed credit or applause. As I scanned the pages, an ugly irony settled over me. I had been wealthy enough to secure my daughter's life, and yet modest enough that a brash young man could stand in a ballroom and call me a loser without knowing the truth. I let out a slow breath and closed the ledger. The anger was still there, but it had cooled into focus. If I wanted to expose Ryan, I couldn't do it with hot fury. Fury blurs. Evidence does not. So I began the work of collecting the evidence that could not be brushed away. Notarized deeds, bank statements, business registrations, signed transfer documents. I called my old accountant, Mr. Patel, and explained in low tones that I needed copies of records and explanations. He didn't ask questions. He only said, "As always, Mr. Hawley, I will arrange everything." While I pulled documents, I also found myself revisiting memories, small incidents that had seemed trivial at the time, but now formed a pattern. I wrote a list on an old envelope, signs. Beneath it, I wrote, dismissive of our modest home, bragged about investments, before we knew the facts, pushed for financial control, asked about accounts, what's yours is ours, laughed about charity, saying waste of funds, quick temper when not obeyed. Too eager to impress his superiors, status over substance. Each line made the envelope thicker, heavy with truth. I remembered the time he arrived at my little house and laughed aloud at the old stuff. The night he joked at Lily's charity work, and the slow way he tried to rewrite household decisions. I remembered his friend, the man who whispered ideas into Ryan's ear about using opportunities rather than creating bonds. One afternoon, Mr. Patel handed me a photocopy of a transfer that made my stomach drop. A sizable amount moved from an account labeled as my daughter's educational fund into an account linked to a company Ryan used for his events. At first, I thought it was misfiled. Then I saw the date after the engagement, the date Ryan had full access to certain joint accounts. My hands shook. I didn't call him a liar then. I didn't go crashing into the man who had promised to protect my daughter. I gathered the paper. I made a copy. I put it in a folder labeled simply for Lily. For the first time, the plan turned from theory into obligation. I would gather, I would wait, and when the moment demanded, I would reveal. I could not do this alone. Quiet wealth does not scare away enemies or protect a loved one. It needs partners, a lawyer with discretion, an accountant who keeps his mouth shut, a friend who remembers the man you truly are. I thought of Daniel Reed, an old college friend who had become a respected attorney. He had a reputation for handling ugly family disputes with a surgeon's precision and a priest's discretion. I dialed his number with a trembling thumb. "Daniel," I began, when he answered, "I need help. Not just as a lawyer, as someone who will stand on my side of the truth." I told him as much as I could, without telling all of the grief again. He listened. He said quietly, "Bring me everything. We'll look. We'll prepare. And Richard, do not do anything impulsive. Let the law do what it does best. Make falsehoods impossible." His calm steadied me. With Daniel on board, I felt the first warmth of possibility. We met in his office, a small book-lined room where he smelled of old paper and coffee. He examined the papers, his brow furrowed, and looked up at me. "This is enough," he said. "Not to convict in a criminal court yet, but enough to begin a public unmasking if we time it right. If he has taken from an account that's rightfully your daughter's, that is theft. And if he's lying to his boss, to his friends, to your family, we expose it. And the proof will speak louder than his arrogance." "You mean expose him publicly?" I asked. "Yes," Daniel replied. "He used public humiliation at the wedding. You will respond in public." But calmly, strategically, with evidence. We plotted like two chess players. Daniel advised that the more theatrical the reveal, the more people would recall the detail. How Ryan mocked me in front of his boss, how he laughed, how he used me as a prop to show his status. He suggested the perfect stage, a reception dinner when the family and friends would be present, when Ryan would be at ease, when his boss would be there to witness the unravel. He also insisted on making our case bulletproof. Evidence, Richard. Don't give him the chance to deny. Paperwork, witnesses, clear timelines. We trace every transfer back. So that's what we did. Over the next weeks, Daniel and I quietly worked, assembling pages into a portfolio that would not be easy to dismiss. Mr. Patel delivered the account printouts. A former accountant of Ryan's provided statements showing irregular transactions in the same corporate entity. Ryan used to funnel money to a woman who was not. Lily, a neighbor, confirmed seeing Ryan and a woman leave late nights in a car registered under the events company. Jessica, the woman's first name, had been shy at the start, but Daniel's discreet approach persuaded her to give a written statement, confirming that she had received funds and lavish gifts. Each confirmation was another nail driven into a coffin of lies. There was one document I kept showing myself. A transfer stamped a week after the wedding. A transfer from an account that had once been earmarked for Lily's first home deposit. It sickened me. My anger grew, but not just that. A fierce protectiveness burned brighter than anger. This was no longer about pride. This was about securing Lily's future, protecting what I had built in silence. We didn't rush. The advantage of planning is patience. I tested him with small things. I asked my daughter, gently, if she knew the details of certain accounts. I asked Ryan a question at the table about his plans and watched how he dodged. I made passing comments about real estate when he was around. Each time he would either puff up or flounder. It was intoxicating to watch the mask wobble. At the same time, I made myself visible in other ways. Not by spending or flaunting wealth, never that, but by letting other people see me on my own terms. A scholarship donation through the local school quietly listed under my old company's name. A discreet contribution to a community shelter bearing my initial and a note. People who had seen me as pitiful began to ask questions. "Oh, Richard, I see you support the school," a neighbor said, surprised. "I didn't know you were involved." I merely smiled. This is the paradox of humility. If you choose it as a character, people might misread it as weakness. If you wield it as truth, you can change the story's ending. As pieces fell into place, the plan evolved. We booked the date, the same reception hall, the same circle of friends who had been present at the wedding. Daniel advised I remain calm, that the reveal must be factual and mercilessly precise. The date approached, and with it, a heartbreak that never truly left me. Lily. I worried about how she would react. Part of me wanted to storm in and force her eyes to see the man who used her. Another part of me wanted to shield her from the shame, to protect her heart. Daniel reminded me that truth is a medicine, bitter at first, but it heals. One night, alone at the kitchen table, I took the thick folder, all the documents, the the signed statements, the banked printouts, and placed them into a leather portfolio. I closed it slowly. My hands weren't shaking anymore. The fire that once burned openly had become a steady flame. I was ready. I walked to the bedroom and looked at Lily's photograph on the dresser, her graduation smile frozen in time. "I'm doing this for you," I whispered. "Not for pride, not for vengeance, for your life to be in the hands of someone who deserves it." And with that, I went to bed on the night before the confrontation, knowing the next day might change everything. The reception hall smelled of polished wood and roses. But beneath the surface, there was something else, a current of arrogance, thick and suffocating. Ryan was in his element, shaking hands with his boss, clinking glasses, making grand speeches about building a future. He strutted in his tailored suit, his grin plastered wide, his hand loosely around Lily's waist as if she were part of his display. I stood at the edge of the room, unnoticed by most. To them, I was the same quiet man who had been dismissed at the wedding. Just another shadow, unimportant, unworthy of attention. I let them think that. For the last time, I let them think that my hand rested on the leather portfolio tucked under my arm. The weight of it felt like a heartbeat, steady, determined. This was not just paper. This was truth. This was Justice. I watched Ryan for a long moment. He was laughing too loudly, boasting too much, and flattering his boss, Mr. Harrow, with stories that were nothing but smoke. Harrow seemed amused, but slightly wary, a man who had seen many young men try too hard. I caught Daniel's eye across the room. He gave me the smallest nod, signaling it was time. My chest tightened, but my steps were firm as I crossed the polished floor. The chatter dimmed as people noticed me approaching Ryan and his circle. Ryan turned, surprise flickering across his face before his usual smirk returned. "Well, look who decided to show up," he sneered. "Our family's philanthropist of poverty." Laughter rippled through his friends. "I was just telling Mr. Harrow about you. My father-in-law, retired, broke, but full of stories. Isn't that right?" The words stabbed, but I didn't flinch. Not this time. I let his mockery hang in the air, let the room take in his arrogance. And then I spoke, calm and steady. "You've told many stories, Ryan," I said. "But tonight we'll hear the truth." He blinked, taken aback by my tone. "Excuse me?" I opened the portfolio slowly, deliberately, and laid the first document on the table beside him, a bank statement with his name tied to transfers from Lily's fund. Gasps echoed from nearby guests as I slid the paper forward. "Perhaps you'd like to explain," I said evenly, "why you took money from my daughter's account to finance your so-called events." Ryan's face drained of color, then flushed crimson. That's ridiculous. These are lies, are they?" I countered, pulling the notarized copy from beneath the first. "This statement bears your company's name, your signature. And here," I added, laying down another sheet, "a signed declaration from your former accountant, confirming the transaction." The murmurs grew louder. Mr. Harrow leaned closer, his expression darkening as he read. Lily stiffened beside Ryan, her eyes darting from me to the papers. Confusion and fear etched across her face. Ryan tried to laugh it off. "Old man, you've gone senile. Fabricating papers won't change the fact that you're nothing. You think this charade will—" I raised a hand, silencing him. "I've lived humbly because I chose to, not because I had nothing." I pulled out another set of documents, deeds, ownership records, investment statements. While you mocked me as worthless, I was building a life quietly. I own businesses, properties, partnerships, more than enough to secure Lily's future. Gasps turned into stunned silence. I let the weight of each word settle. But unlike you, I never needed to flaunt it. Because wealth without respect is emptiness. And you, Ryan, are empty. Ryan stammered, sweat beading at his temple. He's lying. He turned to Harrow. Sir, you can't believe this, but Harrow was staring at the documents, his jaw tight. These aren't lies, he said coldly. These are official. And you, Ryan, I trusted you. I gave you chances. And you mocked your own father-in-law, not knowing the truth? That shows your character more than anything. Ryan's mask cracked then, his smirk gone, his voice trembling. Lily, please, he's twisting everything. I only wanted us to have a better life. By stealing from her? I snapped, my voice finally rising. The room went still. By treating her father as a prop for your vanity? You belittled me because you thought wealth was the measure of a man. But tonight, everyone here sees what you truly are, a fraud, a coward, and a liar. I laid down the final piece, Jessica's written statement, signed and dated, confirming Ryan's secret gifts and meetings. The room erupted. Friends gasped. Family members whispered furiously. Lily covered her mouth, tears spilling as the betrayal sank in. Ryan's knees buckled. He clutched the table, his arrogance finally stripped bare. I turned to the room, my voice steady, my heart hammering. You all laughed when he mocked me. You saw a man in plain clothes and assumed I was worthless. But let this be a reminder. Respect is not measured in wealth, but in character. I chose humility. He chose deceit. And tonight, the truth chose to reveal itself. Silence followed, heavy and absolute. Then, slowly, heads began to turn toward Ryan. Eyes filled with disgust. Ryan tried one last time, his voice cracking. Lily, you know I love you. But Lily pulled her hand free from his grip, stepping back. Her tears were no longer just of pain. They were of awakening. She looked at him with shattered trust, then at me with a mixture of sorrow and respect. I can't believe you, she whispered. All this time, Ryan's world crumbled in that instant. His boss walked away, shaking his head. Guests followed, leaving him isolated. The same people who once laughed at his jokes now avoided his eyes. His power, his pride, evaporated before him, and I stood taller than I had in years. Not because of the wealth, not because of the papers, but because I had defended my dignity and my daughter's future. The truth had spoken, and it had spoken loudly. The reception hall felt like a battlefield after the war had ended. The music had stopped. The laughter had died. And in the center of it all stood Ryan, pale, broken, his carefully built mask shattered into pieces for everyone to see. People whispered around him, but no one offered comfort. The friends who had cheered his arrogance now turned their backs. The boss he worshipped was gone, leaving only disappointment in his wake. And Lily. Lily's eyes were red, her mascara streaked from tears, but her voice when it came was steady. Ryan, she whispered, her hands trembling. All this time, I thought you loved me for me. I thought we were building something real. But you weren't building anything. You were stealing. From me, from my family. From the very people who trusted you. Ryan fell to his knees. Lily, please. I made mistakes, but it was for us. I wanted us to have more. I didn't mean to. Didn't mean to? She snapped, her voice breaking. You lied to me, mocked my father, betrayed everything we stood for. How do you even say that's love? She turned from him then, her shoulders shaking. For the first time since her wedding day, I saw not just a daughter blinded by love, but a woman opening her eyes. Ryan reached for her hand, but she pulled away. His desperation grew, his voice cracking. Please, Lily, don't leave me like this. Not in front of everyone. I'll fix it, I swear, But his words fell flat. No one believed him anymore. He was a man stripped bare of dignity, left with only his cowardice. He looked at me then, hatred and fear tangled in his eyes. "This is your fault," he hissed. "You wanted to ruin me." I cut him off, my voice calm but sharp. "No, Ryan, you ruined yourself. I only revealed what you tried so hard to hide." The room was silent again. This time, it wasn't the silence of shock. It was the silence of judgment. Everyone had seen who Ryan truly was. There was no coming back. I stepped forward, not for Ryan, but for everyone watching. My voice carried through the hall, not raised, but strong enough to reach every ear. When Ryan mocked me as poor and worthless, many of you laughed. You believed his words because you judged me by what I wore, not who I was. And that's the tragedy of our world. We measure people not by their heart, but by the shine of their shoes. I paused, letting the weight of it sink in. I lived simply not because I was empty, but because I was full of love for my daughter, full of pride in working hard, full of dignity that no insult could take away. Respect is earned, not bought. And tonight, we've all seen that money without character is nothing but dust. My voice broke slightly, emotion rising. I raised my daughter alone, with everything I had. Not gold, not silver, but time, sacrifice, and love. And I would do it again 1,000 times. Because true wealth isn't in the bank. It's here. I placed a hand over my heart. A hush swept over the room. Guests lowered their eyes, ashamed. Some nodded softly, moved, and Lily. She looked at me with tears that carried both regret and gratitude. She came to me then, her voice trembling. "Dad, I don't know what to say." I should have listened. I should have seen the truth. I took her hands gently. "No, Lily, love blinds us all. What matters is that you see now. And I will always stand by you, not to judge you, but to protect you. That's what a father does." She broke into sobs, collapsing into my arms, and for the first time that evening, my own tears fell. Not of pain, not of humiliation, but of relief. My daughter was back. Ryan staggered to his feet, his face pale, his voice hoarse. "You'll regret this," he spat weakly, but even he didn't believe his own words. He stumbled from the hall, abandoned, disgraced, and utterly alone, that no one followed him. No one spoke for him. His downfall was complete. The reception slowly resumed, but the air had changed. Guests approached me, some apologizing, some praising my strength. But I didn't need their words. My dignity had never depended on them. Later, as I sat beside Lily, watching her take deep breaths, I felt a peace I hadn't felt in years. I had faced betrayal, endured humiliation, and stood firm. And in the end, respect, not wealth, not power, not appearances, had won out as the night ended. I spoke one last time, not to the crowd, not to Ryan, but to anyone who would ever listen. If you ever find yourself mocked, belittled, or dismissed, remember this. Their laughter does not define you. Your worth isn't in their eyes, but in your own heart. Stand tall, even when they try to cut you down. Because one day, truth has a way of revealing itself. And when it does, everything changes. I turned back to the camera of my story, my voice soft but firm. If you believe that respect is worth more than wealth, share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And for more stories of betrayal, truth, and redemption, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel.